Welcome, everyone. My name is Danielo Garcia. I am the general manager of the studio department at B&H. We're really happy to be here. Seeing a lot of familiar faces. We're thrilled to be sponsor of this event and one of the co-founders. Our panel today involves. It is cool, yeah. Well, it's a great segue from the last panel in terms of virtual production and AI. So this one is bridging the gap, integrating AI generative tool sets into existing production workflows. And today we have with us, Erik Weaver will be moderating, Minh Do and Andy Milkis. And I'll hand it over to Erik as the moderator to make the introduction and take it away.
Hello, everyone. I got thrown into this panel Wednesday afternoon, and I went straight to Sundance, so we're going to do a wonderful job here, and it's going to be amazing. So let's just start off by introducing different people. Minh,
hey,
tell us about you and what you've been up to.
Yeah, hey everybody, my name is Minh. I'm a co-founder of Machine Cinema, which is an AI creative community, film, as well as AI filmmaking community. We also do education, we do events. Last year, 2024, we did 17 events. Last year, we did 150 events all around the world, teaching AI to filmmakers. So I usually joke we're like trying to build an AI filmmaking army, which is growing slower than you'd think. I'm also, within Machine Cinema, we also try to provide services for our community, like jobs. We try to help them with finding collaborations, et cetera, et cetera. We're also experimenting with like AI entertainment. What does that mean? Like for immersive experiences. And then we also have a production studio called Fantastic Day, which does hybrid work, similar to what we just looked at, with working with big studios, especially in LA.
Hi, everybody. My name is Andy Milkis. I'm a visual effects artist based out of New York. I work in film, TV, commercials, sometimes direct-to-brand stuff. And I primarily use Autodesk Flame as my compositing app of choice. And in addition to being a freelance VFX artist, I founded a community called Logic.tv, which is the online community for Autodesk Flame artists.
And as a quick background, if you don't know me, I work for the ETC. The ETC is a nonprofit think tank. We do kind of pioneering research in new areas. As a matter of fact, I did a lot of the foundational work in ICVFX. As a matter of fact, I see Mr. Kang there. That guy is a god in the field, just so you know. Sorry, there. But so we've done all kinds of work along that side. And now we've kind of put our eyes towards AI. And since then, I have done productions in animation, which one will be rolling out with our partner Asteria coming up for animation on Chickaboom. The Benz, which is a fully generative 7-8 minute film that's storyboarded end to end and actually done exactly as the creator wanted, that will actually be converted into 35 millimeter and scanned back with photochem, hybrid stuff, and everything in between. So I do have experience playing with all the tools and stuff. On the main stage earlier today, someone said, can you make a film with AI? And I think what that really comes down to is actually the concept of either push button or pipeline, in my opinion. And the pipeline's really what's critical. Push button, if you look at Edward Saatchi or someone like that, he'd say, yes, you could. I'm not a fan of that kind of style. But when you get to workflow, I think the answer is yes at this particular point. So I'm going to start with you, Andy, and talk a little bit about what are you seeing and what are the tools that are impacting you and how they're changing?
Sure. So the first kind of tool set I was working with in the AI and ML space were the utility things, doing roto or doing some kind of cleanup or generating an element or a pass that I would use as part of my VFX work. And that was maybe the last 3 years, let's call it. And then in the last 12 months, I've been incorporating more and more Gen AI as part of my commercial visual effects workflow. And it's just, the last 6 months have been like a roller coaster. I know it's probably been said on every panel, but everything I'm about to tell you is already obsolete because these are all from things that happened last week. And it's just, it's just an extraordinarily exciting time to be working in visual effects right now. Especially if you're curious, if you're creative. If you mentioned in your panel, the whole concept of lifelong learning. I'm 52. I know you don't believe it, but
Hey, I've got you beat. I'm older than that.
oh, perfect. I'm as excited about what I do for a living as I was when I started at 22, and that's in no small part to just kind of the ever-changing landscape of all these tools.
So I'd actually like to make a distinction in something you said there. When I look at AI for media and entertainment, I'd really like to say there's kind of primarily two aspects. There is utility, like you said, and there's generative. So there's something that's working a little bit more in the background in a mathematical purist, kind of utility aspect. And those kind of things have saturated the tool set already. I would absolutely say that it's almost impossible to make a film today without touching AI, whether you want to or not. Because you're not going to get older versions of some of these softwares and be able to reinstall them that have not begun to use machine learning in some aspect there. And then there's generative, which is creative. So I think that that's an important distinction as we go on. So, Ben, I had the wonderful pleasure of going with your partner to Korea, and he taught a class, Fred, and it was wonderful to sit down and see how they structure things out. So tell us a little bit more about how you either work with studios or what you see changing and evolving.
Yeah, I guess, because we came from the advantage of a bunch of filmmakers tinkering with AI like 3 years ago, and just like trying to figure out Midjourney, DALL-E, and Runway was the only ones, right? And now it's like 100 tools or 150 tools, and everybody has their preferences, everybody has what they want, and you have people having different ethical standards depending on who they are, which I think is an interesting distinction that we're seeing more and more. Is like, oh, we want to work with Asteria because they're trained on copyrighted materials or that they've licensed, versus we want the best of the best, which might be the Chinese models, which we have no idea how they're acquiring their data. So I think that's been a shift. But from the very beginning, when we were talking to the larger studios, they were all interested in creating their own models. But then in the last year, I would say they kind of shifted away from that. Maybe because they realized they didn't want to, or maybe they're still experimenting. But it was like, I was not surprised that Disney did a deal with Sora, because with OpenAI, because how could they ever catch up with what OpenAI is doing with their researchers, et cetera? Like, they have to raise $50 billion to get all those people. So that's been a shift for me. And I think the last 9-10 months, more and more hybrid stuff, like what we're seeing, we just saw in the last session, is like more and more people seeing that as acceptable. At the same time, I mentioned earlier, not a large growth in the amount of AI creators at a high level, I would say, like, who are only using AI. That is not growing very much, surprisingly to me. And yet, those are maybe the most in-demand people amongst the AI tool companies that I talk to, and AI studios. AI studios and AI tool companies are increasingly wanting to hire AI creators and filmmakers who can push and break the tools, which is a rare, you have to be very curious and disciplined to be at that level. Most people are like, oh yeah, look, Nano Banana Pro plus Clink can give me amazing results, but that you're not breaking the tools when you're doing that.
So let me cover real quickly the ethical landscape challenge. You have, in my opinion, 3 tiers of models. Your first tier is going to be your ethically clean models, in which they basically have shown provenance to paying, not necessarily the artist, but for the rights to this material to train on. The second tier is going to be organizations that might have a little mire in them, but are going to give you writs and warrants. They're going to go to court for you, to fight for you, and stay safe. And then you get the Chinese models, which you never know what they're going to come up with, and where they're getting their data from, and if they're scraping or not. So that would be kind of a foundation. And so you mentioned the company Asteria. Do you want to talk a little about them or what their whole aspect is?
I don't know if I'm a good advocate for what they do, but Asteria and Moon Valley. Moon Valley is their AI model company that they're partnered with, or they're the same company. But basically, their whole deal is that they acquired licensed content from, let's say, Paramount, Fox, or whoever you can name, and use that to train their model. The caveat is that their outputs are probably not as good as those who are scraping everything on the internet, right? And so there's kind of this dynamic where you'd rather use the better model that has like dirtier data, or you want to be ethical and use the weaker model. But you have to, but then that requires more technicality, right? Which is why I think the comfy UI, the open source world is using things like Moon Valley, because you have to be very technical to kind of squeeze really great stuff out of the kind of a theoretically weaker model.
I've seen a really interesting shift in the last year with the clients that I work for as a freelancer, where they've gone from either a like AI, you can't even say that word, it's verboten, just do not go there, to then I would ask, like, is it okay to use, what's your AI ML policy? And they would say no. And I'd say, well, can I use the Gen AI tools in Photoshop? And they would say, oh yeah, we have a license to Photoshop, that's fine. And so I think part of this whole process as an artist or as an end user is kind of educating your client a little bit, as much as you can, you know, depending on the size of the client. If it's a mom and pop, that's one thing. If they have a legal department with more people than your hometown, that's an entirely different, you know, situation. But it really seems like, at least from my experience in the last 12 months, it's gone from no to, hey, can we use AI? You know, for all the reasons why people want to say that either they're satisfying the requirement that they have an AI strategy, whatever that means, or they want to save money, which we all know what that means.
Or go faster.
Or go faster. Yes.
And I will say the funny thing is, you know, that Adobe point, like, and then I go talk to Adobe, and Adobe's like, we're trying to provide everybody with all the AI models.
Right.
And so you have the clients saying, hey, we can't use everything, but we'll use Adobe. And Adobe's like, well, we have everything.
Problem solved.
But they'll go to court for you. And that's the rule. As actually, I was trying to list the clean models once in a talk, and Dana Williams called me out. She's like, you can't put Adobe in there, because they don't know where 5% of it came from. And I don't know the truth on that. I can't tell you that that's true or wrong, but she yelled at me on that particular one. So a little tricky there.
And all the lawsuits are not like settled yet, right? So we're still up in the air on Disney and Universal suing Midjourney. And I think Adobe Firefly, I think, trained partly on top of Midjourney imagery. So.
And I really shouldn't keep going down this rabbit hole, but the problem you're going to have in the future is the concept of frame laundering. So what frame laundering is basically people are going to go to cowboy models, get their first frame, then they're going to drop it into a clean model. And you're not going to be able to track that. You're never going to know where it comes from. So we have a dilemma coming up on us real quick here that not everyone might have spotted. Big model companies, as far as I know.
But I guess we all have something to look forward to.
So let's keep going back into a little bit more of the workflow. And where are you seeing it most exciting, or how do you see it impacting? Let's start with you.
Sure. I mean, originally, all the AI stuff was a productivity multiplier. You know, I could get stuff done faster, or I can get more iterations of something done faster. And I guess it was in the fall, I worked on my first 2 like fully Gen AI spots as an AI artist. I reached out to a friend of mine whose company was doing this, and I said, listen, I really want to do this with all of the stresses of, you know, delivering something by 6 o'clock. And I was assigned the task of as a first frame artist. So I would make the first frame of every storyboarded frame of this commercial. And it was amazing. I sent it over as a clip. I don't know if they have it, and if not, you can find it. It was a Jeep commercial with talking animals. And the greatest part of this experience for me was kind of like, I would take a reference photo that I got from the client. They gave me whatever. They wanted to see a black bear in the Pacific Northwest. And so they gave me photos of that. And I would feed those photos to, in this case, like ChatGPT. And I would say, please look at this and tell me what you see. And give me your answer formatted as a prompt for Seedream, which is the model I was using. And what I got out of that was an understanding of how the model is trained, how it identifies what a black bear is or what trees in the Pacific Northwest are. And that instantaneously changed my point of view from, what was it called, the prompt and pray, to like going from like, this sucks because I'm not getting what I want, to understanding that, oh, it's not that this sucks, it's I'm not speaking its language or speaking the language that it was trained. So once I did that, all of a sudden I was off to the races. And you very quickly learn that every one of these models has a different strength and weakness. And that's all based on their data set. And it's just like then for me, it became similar to every other traditional VFX pipeline tool, right? There are certain keyers that work better in linear space than in log space, and so on and so on and so on. And once I went there, I was just off to the races, and that kind of opened up the world of Gen AI to me, as, you know, instead of something where we would just kind of like make fun of it because you get a result back where the bear had 6 arms, to like, now I'm getting more predictable results because I understand how I don't like to anthropomorphize, but how this is thinking or what it is seeing. So.
And I do think that that's a really great trick, is once you got an image, go back and get the keywords or get the prompts for them. You can analyze a scene or a spot or anything. Yeah.
And then from there, it was like, I kept hitting that stumbling block of I want certain things in certain places of the image, whether it was for consistency reasons or not. And I began to realize that these models did not have any understanding of like world space. It isn't like they were converting this image I fed into like vector information, and it knew that this distance was 2.5 meters or something like that. So that got me down the path of understanding what like control nets were. And I saw that there were
Control nets is your buzzword of the day.
Yeah, there were all these tools in whatever, in Comfy UI or whatever, that would make a depth map for me. And for me as a compositor for 30 years, that just meant, how do I make something like accurately have depth of field? But I instantly learned that, oh, no, this is what's teaching the model where things are in space in this frame. And then all of a sudden, this became, it wasn't prompt and pray anymore. This became a very useful set of tools, because I was able to wrap my head around how they think, or how they were trained. And ever since then, it's just become like the go-to solution for any parts of the visual effects pipeline that I'm confronted with. I now kind of look to Gen AI first as a way to either start or get over a hump or finish. And I find that less and less and less I'm kind of just clicking, run the model again to see what I get.
I say one of my friends is fairly influential in the Midjourney space, and mapping his career has been very interesting, because he started out doing client work for brands and clients and companies, and then he got really tired of that because they kept asking him for changes, and so he shifted to teaching, because at least he could control teaching the clients how to use the tools. And then now he's shifted to just creating workflows. He just creates a packaged workflow. So with your example of like, hey, how do you get this black bear or whatever, he just creates a workflow and just gives the client the workflow, and they pay him for the workflow. So that is the course of his career over the last 3 years, is how his career shifted, which I think is really fascinating to me, because, and a lot of it is just node-based workflows. Like, he's just like repackaging a node-based workflow that he created for a very specific use case. And now, in the last 3 months, he's just vibe coding tools for clients that are specific workflows that don't even.
A lot of.
And actually, at the very top end of all the best creators that I know, they're just vibe coding tools for themselves, because they are producer director editors, or they're producer editors, or they're VFX editor 3D, and they only know how their brain works, and so they're just vibe coding their own tools for their own use cases. They don't even want to deal with these VC-funded AI start tool companies. So I think that's such a fascinating evolution. I don't know if that's going to persist. I mean, obviously, vibe coding is going to get better and better in the last 6 months to a year. So that's been really fascinating to watch. And at the same time, I've been mapping against, about 6 months ago, I went to a Korean comics conference. I'm a nerd. And I was asking them, like, are you guys using AI in your production yet? And they're like, we use it for previs, we use it for post, which everybody in the space I've met says. And they said we don't use it in production yet because it's still cheaper to work with real animators than AI. And I think that might be the reason why we're not seeing more AI creators, because it's still fairly expensive to generate, even though it purportedly is cheaper. If you have the expertise, you're probably going to spend less time doing something without AI. So I don't know. Those are a few kind of like themes.
And I think there's a big difference between individual trying to create fun and entertaining images and looking at a studio perspective of all of this. And how are you working on a studio kind of production or grade production? So what we found was on the Bends, it was a purely generative film. We created virtual machines. Everyone logged into those machines. They had access to all the different tooling and pieces out there from VO3 to other things. But then they also had basically their LoRa models, so their main characters, their pieces. And they could use all these tools, and then they had storyboards or animatics that they were targeting to, and we built into shot grid and everything. But there is a point in which you have to quit, or you have to say, I'm not going to work on that shot anymore. It's close enough, and I will now take it into another tool to in-paint something, out-paint something, change all these other components, because you're just not, you're going to spend another 10 hours and 5,000 shots or whatever to get to that next place. So you got to be cautious of that, I think.
I thought like another great takeaway from this journey, right, was there was one shot in this commercial that called for an over-the-shoulder shot of an owl in the front seat of a car looking at like the infotainment screen. And I'd already been on this for like a week, and I'd gone through like the prompt and pray and all this stuff. And I said to myself, like, what are the odds that an owl has a shoulder, okay? Or that someone tagged an owl's shoulder when they were tagging like the data for the data set. And then I fell back to my visual effects training, where it was like, if a client said to me before there was ever any AI, we would like to have an owl in the front seat of a car and have an over-the-shoulder. I know it doesn't have a shoulder, but a shoulder shot of an owl. We have the owl for 1 hour. What would you do? I would say, well, shoot a plate of the car and then shoot the owl on green screen. And then we'll just put the owl wherever we have to. And so that's what I did. I found some image on Google Images of a perfectly well-lit scoop green screen, and I fed that into ChatGPT, and I said, please describe what you see, blah, blah, blah. And then it took about 10 generations of an image to get an owl from behind, because I guess most of the images of owls, the owl's eyes are looking at camera, like that the data set was trained on. I did go so far at one point as to take that into Photoshop and just use the remove tool to remove the eyes. Don't do that. It's not a thing. But the long and the short of it is, I could have spent a day and however many dollars prompting and prompting and prompting and prompting, or you go like, this is as far as this will go. This is all I'm going to get. And now I need to fall back on traditional VFX tools to take that across the finish line.
So we had a situation on the Bends, it's about a blobfish, and you couldn't find a blobfish on any of these models. That's not a very commonly taken picture of. And if you know anything about a blobfish, it's a normal fish on the bottom of the ocean, and it gets really bad distortion of its body when it comes to the top. It's actually considered the ugliest animal in the world. Anyways, so what we had to do is we had to go to oceanic institutes and license images from them. And why this is important, so what we did was we then took those 2D pictures, used Meshi, created a three-dimensional model, cleaned that model up, wrote a script to turn it around, relight it, and then made our LoRa of stability. And why this is important is in Hollywood, SAG agreement says you cannot take a SAG actor's likeness and drop it into a major model. That's against the law. It's against the rules. So you've got to be able to create your own unique data sets that stay out of larger models, which is pretty tricky. So you got to watch for little nuanced rules like this. One other thing I did really want to highlight is, ooped over there, we ended up writing a provenance comfy node in ours so that we could track provenance. I don't know if anybody understands the legality of copyright here. The first thing to get copyright in the generative world was Slice of American Pie. Slice of American Pie originally applied. They got rejected. They had to show creative intent and how they manipulated that image. They sent it back, and then they proved all that. They got their copyright. The only animated piece that I'm aware of is Critters. Critters has copyright and both on the character and the critter and the founder
Filmmakers
in here.
in
Yeah.
the Haunted Auditorium.
Yeah, so if you catch him, he is here, so he's awesome. So
They got $30 million from OpenAI.
yeah.
That helps.
Now he has to build his whole pipeline.
So they're going to release their film at Cannes, so they got like 6 more months to go. But
So-
I don't know if copyright. I don't know. I just don't. I don't have this feeling that I have this feeling that copyright is maybe not suitable for this world, and maybe we need another model. I don't know. And maybe this is controversial. I'm not a lawyer, but I just don't know what. Like when I look at the fashion world in particular, I'm like, okay, this AI makes sense for fashion because you cannot copyright a lapel. And so they have subsisted in their own economic framework that works for the fashion world, for better or worse. Like, is that where we're all headed with different forms of content, with film, with music, et cetera? Like, music, I think hip-hop came out of, I mean, a lot of things, but sampling is a big component there. And, of course, now that's copyrighted, and there's ways to deal with that with provenance, et cetera. But I don't know. It just feels like copyright is going to be a weird thing for a while.
I was listening to the Vergecast, like the Neil Patel and the Vergecast, and they were talking about the whole copyright issue, right? And he mentioned, and this just ended the conversation for me about this, at least amongst our Logic community. He said that copyright law prevents you from making a copy of something, right? And so just the act of loading a file from disk to RAM is a copy. That's how bad this is. Like, that's how big of a problem this is vis-a-vis the current, like, our copyright law was never intended to deal with anything like this.
Did not understand digital.
It didn't understand anything, Like a Xerox was maybe it. And so that's when I was realized this is an issue that is far beyond anything that I'll opine on it, but I'm not ever going to.
So let's go a little more positive direction. Tell me what you're most excited about, or what you feel has changed, maybe in the last 3-ish months
Days.
that you think has a lot of opportunity or is very exciting.
Yeah, for me, it would be. That's a great question. Min?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start by saying that I was optimistic 3 years ago, just by the technology, and just DALL-E alone was an unlock for me, where I was just like, whoa, everybody is going to be able to do this stuff, and that's why I traveled to like 30 countries last year. Just like I went to Nigeria, to Warsaw, Hong Kong, and just like trying to see what other people were doing around the world with this like democratizing technology, and I got to see it up close, that there are genuinely people who want to play, which is really exciting to me. Not everybody is as skilled as a lot of people that we know in the industry, but like they're learning because they get to have more chances at bat. They get to practice more, which is I think how you get better. That's what AI is allowing, and so that's what is exciting to me. The last 3 months, I would say I'm really excited about games in particular. I'm really excited about how gaming merges with vibe coding, merges with video, merges with. And I went to, there's a cartoon art museum near the Ghirardelli chocolate place, and I walked over there the other day, and I was just like looking at all these like New Yorker cartoon artists, and like that's such a cool, to me, niche medium that is awesome, and I'm excited for what comes. Like right now we're in the short film universe of AI, and the people are making commercials with AI, people are doing background effects for films with AI, awesome, skeuomorphic. But like, what is the cartoon version of, the one panel cartoon version of AI? What is the, immersive, like what are the next mediums that are coming that will have a whole niche of artists that just do that thing? And that's their thing, that's what I'm really excited about. So, yeah.
I cannot get enough of how empowering all of this is to a creative person, right? Like in the last 6 months that I've been kind of going hardcore on AI and Gen AI, I've never been more appreciative of the liberal arts education I got, the film school education I got, the improv training I had, the theater background I have, because like all of this stuff is really like looking at a problem and going, oh my God, you know what would be great? And getting something back. And like the whole creative process is like making eye contact with someone else in the process and getting our brains in sync so that like you see what I'm seeing in my head, right? And I've felt for the last 20 or 30 years, right, that the tools that we've had, all the digital tools that we've had, have enabled like infinite versions of something. But has that made it better? I don't know, you know. But what I've found, you know, now is that as an artist, I can do more things than I ever thought I could do. I can now participate in disciplines in the creative process that I was never trained in, whether it's coding or visual effects specific. I can do elements of matte painting. I can do elements of CG that I just could never do. I could describe to a CG artist on my team what I need for the comp, or a matte painter what I need for a comp, but I could not do it myself. And the same thing to the pipeline engineer. You know, I'm doing now vibe coding for whatever problems I need to solve, even within my own little space. And so I know there's a lot to be concerned about in this space, you know, but change is always, you know, concerning. I just encourage everybody to, you know, really look at this stuff as an opportunity for you to realize a vision that you have as part of the creative process. And it's just like, it seems like there's just infinite potential for creators.
So I think maybe one of the things I'm most excited about is going to be World Labs or some of the aspects of Gemini where you can create an entire world. Right now at this particular point, I can do any single piece of the workflow. I can deliver 4K UHD quality out the back end off 720p 8-bit color. I can get you 16-bit, 32-bit EXRs if I want. I can do every single component. However, what's really hard is a 5, 10, 15-minute dialogue in a consistent place with multiple shots. If you look at shots, most directors are doing their shots between 4.5 and 6.5 seconds. But it's in the same environment. It's a consistent world. And being able to do that, I think, will be one of the next big breakthroughs. And we're starting to see progress on that side. So that's what I would say. So I know that we have a few minutes left. I really want to open it up to see what you guys have questions of. Do we have any other mics, or do you want to run a mic over there?
I could always shout, but first I have 2 questions. I hate to go back to copyright, but just for a second. What changes? I know, I think it's definitely going to change, but right now, what do you need to change? What do you need to add to something that has a part of AI in it generated to get copyright? And the second thing is, what kind of AI tags are being used now? Is there any kind of consistent tag that this was created with AI for whatever is used, whether it's news, or has anybody come up with a system to tag?
You mean
AI?
by creators or by the?
By anybody.
I know there's an effort.
Is there a universal effort, kind of like?
I don't think there's a.
All right, Gupta, you going to come up here? Come on, join the panel. He's
like
the one who wrote the Come For You, I Know. Thank you very much for copyright in Providence.
Thanks. I guess you asked a couple of questions. So the first question is, what can you do to secure copyright if you're using AI? I mean, the answer is, we'll know in the future, but the idea is that we would want to document wherever the humans are contributing to your workflows, because essentially copyright is about identifying that there is a human role to be played in the art or the work that was created. So make sure that you actually document all of those workflows wherever humans are entering into the picture. In terms of the standards, there is one, there might be a few, but one of them is C2PA. It's an alliance consisting of lots of different companies, but they created this standard that allows you to actually express or make assertions about where things are created, how are things created or edited, and things like that. So C2PA is the standard that you can look into.
Is like, because I don't know if you saw Instagram, what's his name, the CEO of Instagram, I forget his name, but Alex Mosseri or something. He was saying that they are going to have an effort to like tag AI output on Instagram. Are they trying to abide by C2PA or?
I don't know about that, but most of the other companies, like even Google Gemini, when they actually produce their artifacts, they actually have some of those assertions baked into the assets that are generated. Same with OpenAI, I believe. So
that's like when you have generated an image with Nano Banana Pro, there's like an
Correct.
underlying. But then my question is, does that persist when I then use Kling 2.6 to animate that image? Does that artifact persist? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they are tamper evident in the sense that if you change the assertions, then you would know. But then you could actually completely remove all of those assertions. But then C2PA actually gets into the weeds of it, which allows you to actually have those assertions in someplace else, and then you fingerprint your product, and then it gets complicated.
Kind of theory where I can take your image that you animated, I can throw it into that, because, oh no, you modified the original image, you stripped all the information off. I know that you tampered with the original. And it's going all the way back to like original camera assets. So like Sony cameras have the ability to have that. So from the very beginning of a live television broadcast, that hasn't been tampered with, and there's a chain that you can push it back and go, oh, is this real? Like the whole like what's real, what's not. It'll actually tell you, it'll know that it's been tampered or stripped off or stripped away.
Yeah, the ASC has a whole program on that.
There's also, I would say, there's also some like there's a company called the Copy Site, SIGHT. I don't know if you've looked at that, copysite.ai, where you can upload any image to it, and then it will identify using AI the likelihood of this of a reference to an AI or existence reference to another IP. So like you generate an image of a Spider-Man dog, and you upload that image, and it'll be like, oh, this is clearly a Spider-Man.
This is how Skynet became self-aware, right?
I have a
All right.
question.
Well, next question.
I have
Let's
a
see what
question.
else.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
question? So one common thread between the three of you that I'm picking up is that all three of you are involved in certain aspect of communities and community building. So one question that I would like to hear from you is how much collaboration and interaction and exchange is happening between you guys, and how is that affecting the workflows that you guys are developing or implementing?
I mean, I can say that on Logic.tv, we have like it's not written, but we have like a no gatekeeping policy. It's rising tide raises all ships, And it is kind of interesting to watch the community respond. You definitely have a mixture of people who go like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I can't wait to try that. And then on the opposite end, you have I've been doing this for a long time and I know how to do it. And that's what a community is, right? But everybody genuinely seems to be interested. And, there's certainly, there's no lack of discussion on the subject. So.
I'll say like workflows have never expired faster. So, which is ironic when you have AI creators who are like, hey, I shared my workflow and someone copied me. And I'm like, well, like, not only did the companies steal the data, but, well, all right, whatever, so there, but, I think there is some protectionism around some people, some agencies, and which for fair reason, they have a particular workflow if it's getting good results, but also like there's never been more sharing because the ecosystem is so vast, right? There's someone who's really good at lip syncing, someone good at 3D, someone good, and we all have to kind of figure it out.
So there's a term in Hollywood, or especially that Leon Silverman coined, that says snowflake. Everything's a snowflake workflow, right? But you got to be comfortable with the idea that the snowflake's going to melt on its way down and reform in this situation. Because what you're going to start with, especially if you're on more of a studio grade project, is new tools, new technology. Things are going to change. And like, for example, when Nano Banana came out, like it solved a bunch of really painful things for us in our pipeline. I think we have enough for one more.
Just an independent media owner. We started licensing our data, so it was really nice for you to mention Moon Valley, because our data was some of the data that helped create it. So it's just a prop to work with real companies that are licensing and are paying content creators what we're due and what we're worth. So you had mentioned frame laundering. I had never heard that term. So thank you. So you're basically saying
actually comes from Asteria.
It comes from what?
Asteria. They actually have little laundry machines on their desk. Not lying.
So basically, you're saying companies are using dirty data sets.
It's like a caveat emptor warning.
You're saying companies and creators are using dirty data sets at the
I'm saying that
beginning,
it's
and
going
then-
to happen, and
Yeah.
it's going to be a challenge coming up.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm not telling you it's really happening now.
All right. Well, I encourage more companies to work with companies like Moon Valley, who are licensing and paying and giving creators what we're worth. And so thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, it is very valuable. That is a whole complex thing. I just went to a talk yesterday with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and his whole creative. Yeah, but it's a very complex issue.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed everything.
Thanks, everybody.